I'll be back.
My turn.
Do you remember the first time you saw the Terminator? Maybe it was on an old boxy TV or a grainy VHS tape, but that spine-tingling chill when the T-800 assassin rose from the flames remains just as vivid today. In 1984, the movie arrived with a bang, turning a low-budget project, costing just over $6 million, into a global phenomenon. We love it for the on-screen thrills, but few realized that the survival story we saw was mirrored by a battle for survival behind the scenes. You won't believe this. To capture those legendary shots, a stuntman had to risk his life jumping onto concrete without a single thread of clothing. Or the story of a mysterious cursed role, where anyone who played it met with tragedy. And craziest of all, James Cameron himself had to step in and perform a scene because no one else dared to do it. Buckle up, because our time machine is taking you back to uncover the darkest secrets of the Terminator, right now. 1. The female lead fled from the Terminator. With broken feet? On the first day of preparing to step into the role of Sarah Connor, Linda Hamilton received devastating news. Her ankle was broken after a minor accident. But on paper, Sarah was a woman who had to run relentlessly to survive a cold-blooded killer machine. Giving up meant the film would collapse, but continuing meant enduring excruciating pain. The crew had to push all the running scenes to the end, giving Linda time to recover. But when the shooting schedule came, her ankle was still swollen, the injury unhealed. With no other choice, Hamilton tightly wrapped it in bandages, suppressed the pain, and threw herself into every chase scene. The sound of Sarah Connor's footsteps on screen was the real cry of agony from the actress's body. Audiences saw a resilient Sarah defying fate, but the crew knew it was Linda Hamilton truly running on shattered feet. And her effort was justly rewarded, as the role became a resounding success, beloved and idolized by audiences worldwide. The female lead's sacrifice was truly commendable. But then, during filming, a horrifying incident suddenly occurred. 2. The Born from Lightning scene. A stuntman jumped naked from 7 meters onto concrete. Do you remember the scene where Kyle Reese from the future crashes to the ground naked amid the flashing light of lightning? For those few fleeting seconds, a stuntman performed a jump that chilled anyone who witnessed it. He stood on a platform nearly 7 meters high, with no harness, no airbag, just a concrete floor with a few flimsy wooden boards. When James Cameron shouted "Action!", the entire set held its breath. The man launched himself down, no scream, only the whistle of the wind, followed by a bone-jarring thud that shook the set. In that moment, everyone thought he wouldn't stand up. But the stuntman got up, clutching his aching body, trembling from shock, while the crew stood frozen. Michael Biehn, who played Reese, admitted, "It was one of the craziest jumps I've ever seen in my life." If that jump made the set hold its breath, another accident nearly cost the Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, his career. 3. Arnold nearly broke 3 fingers because of a reckless gun. In Terminator 2, the scene where the T-800 spins a shotgun one-handed to reload is one of the coolest images ever on screen. But behind it was an accident that nearly destroyed the Terminator himself. To allow Arnold to spin the gun smoothly, the crew crafted a special shotgun with an oversized trigger. But one day on set, Arnold mistakenly grabbed a real shotgun. Out of habit, he raised it and spun it once. Immediately, the force of the spin sent searing pain through his fingers, as if they were about to shatter. Doctors later warned, if Arnold had spun it just a bit harder, 3 fingers would have been crushed instantly. But don't look away, because you won't believe that this film carried a deadly curse. 4. The John Connor Curse, a fateful role that turned real lives into tragedies. In the Terminator universe, John Connor is the chosen one, the child in Sarah Connor's womb who will later become the resistance leader, the only one capable of leading humanity against Skynet. He is the hope, the reason the past is hunted and the future upended. But the fate of this messianic character in real life became a series of tragedies. Edward Furlong, the street kid in T2, shot to teen stardom overnight. But the spotlight was too blinding, and he couldn't handle the pressure. Furlong fell into drugs, alcohol, was arrested multiple times, and lost all his major roles. Nick Stahl, who took over as John Connor in T3, faded from Hollywood. When fans wondered where he'd gone, the press revealed Stahl was found wandering Skid Row, Los Angeles' infamous slum filled with addiction and despair. Christian Bale, an A-list star who played John Connor in Salvation, seemed poised to break the curse, but then he erupted in rage. A leaked clip of Bale berating the crew on set became one of the internet's most infamous scandals, casting a shadow over the film. Jason Clarke, John Connor in Genesis, bore a different tragedy. No scandals, no drugs, but the film flopped disastrously, with dismal box office numbers, and his career slid downhill. Different fates, all ending in deeply tragic ways. And behind those pains were even more horrific wounds, starting with brutal blows. 5. Beaten for real with a steel pipe, losing sensation in fingers. What would you think if I told you there's a scene in The Terminator where a real person was genuinely injured, with no special effects to cover it up? Sounds unbelievable, right? But that's exactly what happened. In the scene where Kyle Reese frantically smashes the Terminator with a steel pipe, audiences saw staged violence on screen. The reality was different. Tom Woodruff Jr., the effects artist, offered his own hand for Arnold to actually strike. Yes, no fake props, no soft foam, just a living hand and a crushing blow from the Terminator. The result? His hand was mangled, paralyzed, and lost sensation in the fingers for weeks. Cameron even trolled by sending him a Christmas card saying, "Hope your fingers feel again." And that was just a minor accident, because soon after, the crew faced a scene so terrifying that everyone fled. 6. James Cameron risked his life filming the deadly helicopter scene. In T2, there's a scene that takes everyone's breath away. A helicopter races close to the ground, swooping under an overpass, zipping past cars and people. It's considered one of the most dangerous scenes in cinematic history, as a mere misstep by the pilot could have turned the set into a disaster. The professional crew collectively refused, saying, "No, this is too crazy, not worth risking lives." But James Cameron was different. He coldly stepped forward, grabbed the camera, and said, "Give it to me, I'll do it." And so it was Cameron himself, not a cinematographer, holding the camera as the helicopter roared inches above his head. If there had been a slight error that day, audiences would never have seen T2 on screen, only news of a director killed under helicopter blades. And notably, this wasn't the only time Cameron risked his life to preserve his cinematic dream. 7. James Cameron, from spoiled Big Macs to a life-changing $1 script sale. Few would guess that Hollywood's most powerful director today once lived in such misery. After being fired from Piranha 2, Cameron was broke. His car was repossessed, he couldn't pay rent, and he survived on Big Mac coupons sent by his mother. He'd eat one, saving the other for the next day, even if it was soggy and moldy from being past its expiration. In that desperation, Cameron didn't abandon his dream. He hand-drew the entire Terminator storyboard, every frame, every detail, with blind faith that this story would save his life. And like a fateful gamble, Cameron sold the script to Gail Ann Hurd for $1. just $1. But with the condition, he had to direct. From a man eating spoiled food to survive, Cameron became Hollywood's king. Even more dramatic, he married Gail Ann Hurd, the producer who bought the script, only to divorce years later, adding another layer of tragedy to his triumph. But fate didn't stop there. Cameron himself nearly erased a cinematic legacy just because of one line. 8. The line, "I'll be back," almost didn't exist. During the police station scene shoot, Arnold Schwarzenegger expressed doubts about the line. He thought, "I will be back," sounded more fitting for a machine and was easier to say. But Cameron insisted on keeping "I'll be back," believing its brevity and decisiveness carried power. The two argued, but Cameron won, and that take gave birth to one of the most iconic lines in cinematic history. And did you know the film was once sued for plagiarism? 9. James Cameron was sued for plagiarism and lost bitterly. When The Terminator premiered and became a phenomenon, not everyone clapped in celebration. Sci-Fi writer Harlan Ellison claimed the film stole ideas from an episode of The Outer Limits he wrote. Instead of a prolonged legal battle, the studio settled, paying a sum and adding Ellison's name to the end credits. James Cameron was furious, angrily calling him a parasite and saying, "He can kiss my ass." It was a stain Cameron loathed, avoiding mention of it ever since. And, ironically, while Hollywood argued fiercely, the film's central character used just a handful of words to haunt audiences' memories. 10. Arnold spoke only 58 words, but haunted the world. In The Terminator, 1984, did you know Arnold Schwarzenegger had fewer than 60 words of dialogue? Cameron deliberately kept it sparse, turning the T-800 into a true machine, terse, emotionless, and chillingly cold. No long speeches needed, with just a few short lines like, "I'll be back," or "Come with me if you want to live." Arnold etched an image of a destroyer who didn't need to talk. His presence alone instilled dread. A character who spoke less scared audiences more, and that silence made the Terminator an immortal icon. But the crew didn't always choose safe solutions. Sometimes they were ready to risk teaching audiences a criminal skill. 11. The female lead learned to pick locks for real. In T2, the scene where Sarah Connor escapes the asylum by picking the lock on her cell door seems like just a performance. But Linda Hamilton refused to fake it. She insisted on learning to pick locks for real, so the trembling hands in the scene were her newly acquired skill in action. On camera, she performed each move, and the lock clicked open. No cinematic tricks. Sarah Connor truly escaped with her real-life skill. In the UK, this scene nearly got cut because censors feared audiences might learn from it. And speaking of wild casting choices, you won't believe who was once considered to don the Terminator's deadly skin. 12. O.J. Simpson was almost the Terminator. Yes, it's not a joke. Before Arnold was locked in as the T-800, the studio suggested a name: O.J. Simpson. The reason it was rejected is almost comical. James Cameron thought Simpson looked too gentle to convince audiences he was a cold-blooded killer. And so the role slipped from O.J.'s hands. But fate was cruelly ironic. Years later, the world was shocked when O.J. Simpson was accused of real-life murder. In 1994, his ex-wife Nicole Brown and her friend Ronald Goldman were brutally killed, and Simpson became the prime suspect in what America called the trial of the century. But the truths behind this film don't stop there. 13. Arnold appeared for only 16 minutes in the entire film. The Terminator, 1984, runs nearly 2 hours. But did you know Arnold Schwarzenegger, the film's soul, only appears on screen for exactly 16 minutes? James Cameron deliberately made the T-800 a shadow of death, rarely seen, but each appearance instills dread. This storytelling made audiences feel the Terminator was everywhere, haunting the entire film, despite having the screen time of a supporting role. And while Arnold became a nightmare icon, the equally haunting element was the metal skeleton beneath that human skin, a creation born in unimaginable circumstances. 14. The legendary endoskeleton was made in a hotel room. Back then, James Cameron and Stan Winston weren't Hollywood giants. They had no modern studio, no big budget for a lavish design team. All they had was a cramped hotel room, a rickety wooden table, and some tissue paper. In that humble room, Cameron passionately described his nightmare vision: a metal skeleton emerging from flames with glowing red eyes. Stan Winston quietly sketched the first lines on crumpled tissue paper. Each bone, each cable, each metal tooth took shape. With no high-end materials, they scavenged plastic and scrap metal, crafting by hand on the hotel carpet. Night after night, amid scratching pencils and clanking metal, the T-800 endoskeleton's first form emerged. And if the Terminator's form was born from makeshift conditions, its chilling sound was created in an equally dusty garage. 15. Brad Fiedel made the soundtrack with a broken synthesizer. The iconic thump thump, thump thump score wasn't created in a fancy studio. Brad Fiedel, the film's composer, worked in his garage using an outdated synthesizer that kept glitching and producing offbeat rhythms. When Fiedel played it, a pounding, distorted sound emerged, like a mechanical heart beating out of sync. James Cameron heard it and shouted, "Perfect! That's the distorted heartbeat of the Terminator." From a technical glitch, the film gained one of the most memorable soundtracks in cinematic history. But not all of Cameron's ideas succeeded. Sometimes he had to cut an emotional scene because he feared audiences couldn't handle it. 16. Kyle Reese almost had a breakdown crying scene. In the initial cut of The Terminator, Michael Biehn, who played Kyle Reese, performed a haunting scene. Reese, no longer a steely warrior, collapsed, trembling, and broke down in tears, recalling his days surviving a machine-made hell. The camera captured every detail: weary eyes, ragged breaths, a voice trembling with fear. It wasn't just a flashback, it was a rare glimpse into the shattered soul of a surviving soldier. But in the editing room, James Cameron hesitated. He feared audiences weren't used to seeing Reese vulnerable, worried it would slow the film's pace. And so, the scene vanished, erased from cinematic history, living only in the memories of those on set. And did you know that Reese's iconic trench coat was worth no more than a discarded item? 17. Linda Hamilton had a twin sister as a double. It sounds unbelievable, but in T2, many audiences were fooled by scenes with Sarah Connor in a mirror, or when the T-1000 transforms into her fake version. In 1991, visual effects weren't advanced enough to make these scenes so convincing, so people assumed Cameron used highly complex techniques. The truth was surprisingly simple. Linda Hamilton has an identical twin sister, Leslie Hamilton. Scenes with two Lindas in one frame were entirely performed by the two sisters. When the T-1000 became a fake Sarah, one played the real version, the other the fake. No CGI, no machines. Just two people who looked perfectly identical. 18. In Poland, the Terminator was called Electronic Murderer. When the Terminator premiered in Poland, a laughable problem arose. In Polish, Terminator didn't evoke destruction, but meant apprentice or trainee. Imagine audiences buying tickets for The Apprentice. What could be funnier? To avoid this fatal misunderstanding, distributors quickly changed the title to The Electronic Murderer, a name that sounded cheap and quirky, making the screen's coldest killing machine seem like an outdated gadget in a discount store. Yet despite the odd name, the Terminator swept Polish audiences away like it did worldwide. 19. The legendary coat cost $1. The image of Kyle Reese in a worn, tattered trench coat is etched in viewers' minds. That coat created the gritty, weathered look of a soldier from the future stepping into the present. But few would guess it wasn't a meticulously designed piece or a costly, custom-made item. The coat was found in a roadside thrift shop, hanging among discarded clothing. The price? A mere $1. $1 for an item that seemed priceless, becoming a cinematic icon, with fans today willing to pay hundreds for replicas. And like that coat, some initial ideas seemed so naive they're hard to believe, and nearly changed the film's entire look. 20. The studio once demanded a robot dog for Reese. When James Cameron pitched The Terminator to studios, bizarre suggestions started pouring in. Among them was one that infuriated Cameron. Kyle Reese couldn't return from the future alone. He needed a cyborg dog companion. The idea sounded cute, even like something from a kid's movie, where a loyal dog aids its master. But Cameron knew The Terminator wasn't a warm story. It was a chilling nightmare about machine destruction. He rejected it outright, declaring that adding a robot dog would collapse the film's atmosphere, turning it into a joke. Thanks to his firmness, audiences experienced a terrifying, uncompromised work. And when the film was made, Cameron maximized every trick, even bringing the female lead's real sister into the movie. The Terminator is not just an action sci-fi film. It's a cinematic monument where every detail, every scene is steeped in sweat, blood, and breathtaking behind-the-scenes stories. Over 4 decades later, this work retains its power, chilling audiences while affirming James Cameron's wild yet genius talent. That's why The Terminator remains on the list of must-watch films, at least once in a lifetime. If you found this series of dramatic facts fascinating, don't forget to like, share with friends, and subscribe to the channel to catch more shocking behind-the-scenes stories from the world of cinema. Trust me, what you've just read is only the tip of the iceberg.